All right. Welcome to the Web of Tomorrow, episode 1.
Yeah, the true episode 1. It's an array joke.
Yeah, this podcast is zero-based.
Yeah. We'll try to keep the coding jokes to a minimum, but when they present themselves, it's kind of hard to completely avoid them.
So today we're going to talk about text editors, right?
That's
is
right.
An essential tool for any sort of coder, programmer working with text a lot.
Right. So when I started 4 or 5 months ago, I was a little bit confused about text editors. And there's actually a big reason why I was confused. I think I would have learned it a lot faster if I had just jumped into several text editors. But I jumped into Team Treehouse's just web browser text editor that was provided for me.
Gotcha. Which is meant to make it easier and faster to get started, right?
Right.
You just go to the website and you can start
doing
the examples.
Yeah, there's not a lot of... they do kind of go through it with you, but they walk you through it so hand-holdy that by the end of it, you're... Like, when you actually get presented by a actual text editor, or when you see an actual text editor, you're kind of like, okay, so how do I work with this? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. What is a text editor, Adam?
Yeah, so a text editor, you can think of it kind of a lot like Microsoft Word, but there's a big difference between a text editor and Microsoft Word. Word is a word processor. So, a text editor just edits plain, normal text. It's just the letters themselves.
Right. And then, as far as use case, a text editor is the main tool we use to program with.
Yeah, to edit text.
Yeah, to edit text.
Because your programs are written using text.
Yeah.
You're writing out words. You're writing out code.
To get started using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all you need to do is you'll go into your text editor and you'll save as, just like you would in a Word document, because you want to obviously keep track of the changes you make. And then you would add an extension. In HTML's case, it would be... Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, so the way saving a file works is you've got a name and a dot and then the extension, right?
Exactly.
So you might name it index.html. Yeah. So it's interesting you said that you were confused by a text editor because you were using Treehouse and they gave you kind of a text editor in the browser. Because my wife was learning some JavaScript and she kind of did lynda.com and Team Treehouse at the same time. And so almost always on a beginner lesson on lynda.com, the first video is, here's the text editor that I use, here's how you go and download it and install it, and here's some basic functionality of how do you open files and how do you save files.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty valuable.
Yeah. So
when you're starting out, go out, find the most popular, and we're about to talk about a few of our favorites text editors. There's a plethora of text editors. Have you seen Three Amigos?
Yeah.
Every time I say the word plethora, I automatically think of Three Amigos, and I can't be serious after I say the word plethora.
That's why I don't remember that part.
You don't remember that part?
No.
Where El Guapo's like, do you even know what the plethora is? It's like, why Guapo? Anyways, there's my little aside. Every time I use the word plethora, but there are a ton of text editors.
And actually, every computer comes with a very basic text editor installed.
Yeah.
On Windows, that's Notepad, and on Mac, that's TextEdit.
Yeah.
But don't use those for programming.
Yeah.
Some
people use Notepad.
They're okay to start with. When I first started, I just used Notepad. I just used Internet Explorer and Notepad. That's all you needed. That's all you need to make a website is a browser and a text editor.
Yeah, my biggest advice, honestly, would be to just go out and find one of the ones that we mentioned and play around with it. Just do whatever you can on it. Get used to saving files as much as possible. If you're a gamer, it's pretty similar in that you're constantly wanting to save your files, because if you don't, you get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, when you're editing text and writing code a lot, you get this just habit of hitting Command S or Control S. You don't even think about it. You just, bam, just hit Control S and then switch to the browser and refresh.
Yeah,
Like sometimes you'll just stop. Like you've hit save and you didn't even realize you hit it.
Yeah, that's another I guess gamer kind of functionality that you get with hotkeys.
So, what are your favorite text editors?
My favorite text editors. So the first one that I was introduced to, and I think that a lot of people are introduced to, is Sublime Text. And it's actually fairly strongly used, widely used by a lot of people. It's incredibly user-friendly because it has so many plugins and add-ons made available to it just because it's developed so much that it just makes functionality as far as like some aid type stuff like finishing code and formatting code and giving you that kind of functionality for as a new user, it's super useful. And then my other one, the one that I use right now, is Visual Studio Code, which I actually really like. It's got a very different look to it. I like that they built in some of the saving functionality that you'll typically use, like Git.
I've been programming for a while, so I've gone through a lot of different text editors and IDEs, but right now my favorite, I guess maybe we should explain what IDE is. So an IDE is an integrated development environment, and it basically means that it's one program that gives you everything that you need, and it's kind of more old school now. Like it's not really something it's at least not something you'd use for web development, but it has like a text editor built in. That's its main thing, and it will like compile your code and check your code and run your code. Just, I guess a good example of it is Eclipse and Visual Studio. Not Visual Studio Code, but Visual Studio,
Right.
the real, like the pro version or whatever.
Yeah.
And another example would be Xcode, which is what you use to write Mac and iOS apps.
So would you say that those are a little bit more like advanced? Is it like a full stack thing, or?
Yeah, I guess they're more advanced and they're less flexible. So
okay.
the way it would work now is you pick your own text editor, and the text editor does one thing really well, which is edit text. And then you've got other tools around that, which we'll talk in other episodes, to help you do other things.
Yeah. So what's the advantage of using that over just a regular text editor?
I don't know. I like a regular text editor, if at all possible, because it gives you the freedom of choice of how you want to do things.
Okay. That's interesting. I honestly haven't heard a whole lot about IDEs. But but you haven't got into yet your favorite, huh?
Yeah. So my favorite, what I use currently, are Vim. I've been using Vim for over a year now, and Sublime. Like Sublime is always a really great choice. Most people I work with use Sublime.
So what is Vim?
Vim is a little weird. It's a really old editor that has its roots all the way back in the 70s. So it's been around for a while. I think it was 1976 that VI was invented, and Vim means VI improved. But it's basically a text editor where you only use your keyboard. It's not a graphical text editor like all the other ones we mentioned are graphical. You click an icon, it opens an app, and you can use your mouse, and you can click on icons, and you have tabs.
That's graphical.
That's graphical.
Gotcha.
But Vim is a text-based text editor, which is kind of weird to say, but basically it runs in your command line.
So is Vim something that you would recommend for beginning users?
No, probably not, unless you just got a lot of time on your hands. Maybe you're in college, in school, and you got a lot of time, and that's the kind of thing that interests you, then maybe learn it. But if you're in a boot camp or you're trying to change careers or something like that, just stick with what's easy, like Sublime, and just get going as fast as possible.
So it seems like that's probably the strongest recommendation right now is go out, check out Sublime, play around with it any way you can, any way you want to, and it could be a really great first experience with a text editor.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a step back just for a moment, because terminal just got brought up, command line just got brought up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure for a lot of you guys, that's something that you have heard of, the command line. It's when I was growing up, it was the thing that my friends would use and think that they were totally bad A. They thought they were so cool using the command line. And there's like a few commands that they had memorized that they could use to do a few things, functionality with the computer.
Yeah.
So it's your direct way of communicating with the computer that you're using. Command line is the Windows name for the same thing that Mac calls terminal.
Right.
And terminal is actually probably one of the biggest reasons why I personally like using a Mac, because it just seems a little bit more intuitive the way that they have it set up.
Yeah.
I don't know, personally, I just like working with terminal. So some really basic differences between terminal and a text editor, because you will be using both as you go on and program. Terminal is somewhere where you could actually just type out, I want to make a new folder, or I want to save a file, or I want to make a new file, or
move a file, rename a file,
yeah,
or list out all the files in the current folder.
Yeah, all those things that you have available to you on your actual computer that you could use your mouse, or you could just click on a file, or you could make new folder. So those are some of the really basic things that you would use for terminal, and you actually do use it quite often. The text editor is, so the relationship between the two is I go into the terminal, I make a new file that's called index.html, and then I go into my text editor and I start actually programming HTML or coding HTML into my text editor, which would be Visual Studio Code for me.
So Riley, I don't know if you've ever done this, but there's actually a way, if you've navigated to a folder or created a file in the command line, that you can actually run Sublime in the name of the file, and it'll open that file in Sublime.
Oh, that's
Have you done
cool. that? No, I've never done that.
Yeah, so if you do that, Sublime in the name of the file, it'll open up in Sublime, and you have to set it up to do that. It doesn't just do this automatically. But it will open it up in a different program called Sublime. If you run Vim in the name of the file, it'll open up in Vim, and
Awesome.
you're still in the command line.
So yeah, there's tons of cross functionality, and things like that are so cool. And then obviously it just kind of expands from there as you learn more, and just the uses of the terminal, because you will be using the terminal a lot to help you in your coding, or command line, I guess, if you're using a Windows machine. I think Mac is probably one of the more popular machines nowadays for especially startups and tech companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a text editor. Let us know if you guys have any questions. We'd love to address them in the next, at the beginning of the next podcast or show. This is a show, huh? That means that we're like entertainers.
Yeah.
I don't know how entertaining we are yet.
Entertainers/educators.
Entertainers/educators. I like that. So we appreciate you guys joining us in this journey. We're going to keep developing this, and I think it's going to turn into something really awesome. And the next time we get together, we're going to actually jump into and dive into some really interesting JavaScript ideas, maybe even some HTML, CSS ideas and themes that will help you along the way.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do 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 do.